everyone, and welcome to the second episode of the Movie Meatball podcast. I am your host, the Movie Meatball. Today we will be discussing the 2002 film XXx starring Vin Diesel. I grew up watching this movie, just really enjoying all the practical stunts, all of the cool gunplay, and just the connection this film has to extreme sports. I skateboarded when I was a kid. I rode bikes to school every day, doing tricks on them, crashing and hurting myself. You know, that was always part of the fun too. Just really connecting with this film as a little boy. You know, this is definitely a boy's dream films. The cars, the guns, the girls. Speaking more on the girl aspect, I'll get more into it later. Watching this as an older man, you start to kind of think about, you know, maybe this movie doesn't really treat women all that well. And it's unfortunate that that's the case, and you grow up watching these movies and you don't really think about that when you're younger. I'm not going to be gushing all over this film like I was Fast and the Furious. It is by the same director, having one of the same stars, coming out a year after, so this is another effort by Rob Cohen. I do have some criticisms with the film. It's not a perfect movie by any means. Let's get into it. We'll start by discussing some of the themes here. Some of the themes we can look for in this movie. So, rebellion and anti-authority. So we can think of this as, you know, the film begins with Xander stealing a senator's car. So there's a good example of his rebellion and anti-authority there. Individualism and systematic control. We can think of this as maybe the contrast between Xander's rebellion and the government organizations that he ends up working for. The nature of heroism. Xander eventually becomes the hero by continuing the mission out of his morals rather than his orders. So at the beginning of the movie, he essentially has his gun put to his head, saying that if you don't do this, we're going to throw you in solitary. And you're not going to enjoy that, so you might as well just do this for us. Power and corruption. We see some corruption happening in the movie. So the Czech cop eventually is corrupted by Yorgi's organization. Yorgi's organization ends up buying him out and paying him off, and he kind of switches sides. So there's a good example of that. Masculinity and the action hero. So Xander's your prototypical masculine action hero. We don't really see we see a soft side of him eventually when he comes out and has that romantic connection he eventually has with Yelena. Loyalty and betrayal. So yet again, this film is the plot of Point Break, just like the Fast and the Furious was also the plot of Point Break. So there's going to be some similarities there, although Xander does not end up joining the terrorist group. Thankfully, like Brian's character ends up, identifying with the street racers at the end of that movie rather than the police. So, luckily Xander actually does end up taking down the terrorist organization and not joining them. So that's great. We're going to go into a quick recap here for people who haven't seen the movie in a long time. Xander, played by Vin Diesel, is sent on a mission to investigate and neutralize an anarchist group called Anarchy 99, led by a dangerous arms dealer named Yorgi, played by Martin Sokas. And I might mess up these names. The group plans to use a deadly weapon called Silent Night to destabilize the world order. To gain access to their operations, Xander infiltrates their ranks by pretending to be one of them. Point Break. As the story unfolds, Xander finds himself navigating through various high-octane action sequences, including car chases, rooftop stunts, and intense shootouts. Along the way, he also forms a romantic connection with Yorgi's girlfriend, Yelena, played by Asia Argento, or Asia. The film culminates in a tense showdown where Xander must use his extreme skills and resourcefulness to stop the terrorist plot and save the day. Ultimately, Xander succeeds in preventing disaster and is gifted his trip to Bora Bora for his service. Alright, let's start going through my watch notes here. Whenever I go to watch this movie, I'm always I'm so excited and so ready for that Rammstein song to start. Whenever that Rammstein song starts over the opening logos, it just gets me pumped for the film. I'm just so ready. So that song The opening song is called Feuer frei, so it's German for fire freely, and that can be compared to some English phrases, open fire or fire at will. So I think that's a very great song to open up the movie, because it does have to do it's kind of a meta choice, because we do see someone being shot in that opening scene. So, it's basically, it's kicking off the film. It's saying open fire, like the film is starting, let's go. So, and just the concert is just excellent. I believe that was a real concert they recorded in Prague. So the film starts in just a beautiful setting. I love how Prague is portrayed at night. We see Prague at night at first. And the film actually opens up with some beautiful architecture. So I did hunt down exactly that film location. So we see the square that this character is walking through, and we see the cathedral. So that cathedral is a real cathedral in Prague. It's called the Tin, or T. It's spelled T-Y-N, Tin Cathedral, and it's the square that they're in is called the Old Town Square in Prague. So that's very cool. I love Eastern Europe, the architecture, the history. It's so dense with history, Europe is. So we have some cool gadgets. He unlocks the door with that cool gadget. The concert's sick. Everything about the opening I really like. It really draws you in. The music, the cool crowd surfing, the dead body is really funny. After that scene, I think it's really cool how, as soon as we have the first kill of the movie, kind of sets you up for what you're in for. These people, this group is out for blood. They are killers. So immediately after the opening scene, we have a good contrast of setting. We immediately jump to Washington, D.C. We have more CGI fly-throughs of the vents and stuff. We can see that's kind of echoes from Rob Cohen's directing. We see the CGI fly-throughs of the engine, the transmission, and Fast 1. I think it's great. Samuel L. Jackson's character basically says, we need some type of Suicide Squad. He's like, it's basically, he says it without saying it, and we need to I think he says, like, we need to send a snake in, our own snake in, or whatever. So we immediately, we go meet Xander for the first time. We see his tattoo on the back of his neck. I like the Corvette. It's cool. It is an automatic, so I did take some notes on that Corvette. It is a C5 Corvette. That Corvette had the 5.7 liter LS1. But it is rendered lame as fuck because it is an automatic. We don't see Xander rowing through the gears. He just kind of puts it in drive and smashes the pedal, and then we're off. I think it's funny seeing kind of the older technology in this movie that we'll see a little bit more of as the movie goes on. But the film came out in 2001, and the cameras that they put on the car, the crash cameras, are so funny. They're massive, like VHS tape recording cameras in like a crash box, and they're huge. So basically the GoPros from like 22 plus years ago. Xander has his little soliloquy in the car about, violence in video games and stuff like that. I feel like that's, I don't know if it's as heated of a debate nowadays, but you still see kind of rumblings of the whole violence in video games thing still to this day. Hell yeah, the Xander Zone is always awesome. What a great line. The stunt off the bridge is actually really just an amazing stunt. Like, it's done practically. They really did jump off a real Corvette. Someone really did surf a Corvette off the bridge and base jumped off of it. So that's an awesome scene. Shot really cool. We actually do get footage from the cameras, and the drowning pool song. It's kind of lame at this point. I don't know if people are still listening to that song unironically. It's kind of an ironic song at this point, but it does hit pretty hard when the chorus, bangs when the car hits the ground. So I thought that was great. Fucking Tony Hawk is in the movie. He's in the car. He's driving that car. And there are a bunch of other action stars in that scene that I can go ahead and rattle off here. The cameos in that scene from Extreme Sports, we know Tony Hawk. He's pretty recognizable as a skateboarder. Mike Valley, skateboarder. Carey Hart is a motocross guy. And then Matt Hoffman, who I did also recognize, played some of his, the video games. He did have some BMX video games back in the day. But yeah, Matt Hoffman makes a cameo too. Really fun party, all the skateboarding, all the ramps and cool stuff. Matt Hoffman shows up, and fucking more tranquilizer darts. So if you remember from Fast 1, we do see some tranq darts being used in Fast 1, and that continues. And we'll be seeing even more and more tranq darts as the movie goes on. So I'll be pointing that out. Yeah, more trank darts. Rob Cohen just loves trank darts at the end of that scene in the diner. I like how Xander just fucking racks that guy and he crumbles like a tissue paper. That was really good. Vin Diesel's acting, he's a pretty good actor in this movie. You do buy him. He has a lot of good faces in the movie. So there's a good face when he's yanked out of the aircraft for the first time. That's a great face. And then later in the movie, when he's staring down at like the hard drive on top of Ahab, he makes a great face there. So that's really fun. I think it's funny how that guy, one of the other action heroes that, you know, it could be any of them, could be it, but it's totally going to be Vin Diesel. One of them, like, starts grabbing coca leaves off the plant and starts shoving them into his pockets. And my thought was, like, how much could those actually be worth on the street? A cokehead doesn't want leaves, dude. What is a cokehead going to want to do with a bunch of leaves? Like... No, those aren't worth shit on the street. Just, I mean, that's just like my general feeling of that, but alright, buddy. Danny Trejo makes an appearance in the movie. He is pretty funny when he walks in. Everyone starts laughing. The action in this scene after he escapes the barn or whatever, the action is good. It is good practical action. However, on a rewatch, just know how long that fucking action scene goes on for. It's like 10-15 minutes. And it seems like half the budget was used on that one scene. And so whenever I do go to rewatch it and that scene starts, I just kind of like roll my eyes and I'm just like, oh boy, here we go. It is good practical action. There's a lot of slow-mo in the movie. I guess that was cool in 2002. Now it's just kind of, I don't know. I don't like seeing a whole lot of slow-mo. The bike stunts are cool. The body double is so obvious that they use a body double. It's very obviously not Vin Diesel's. I think there's a lot of cheesy sound effects in this movie, especially when it does all the establishing shots of that, like he's like seeing the barn, but it looks like a ramp, and we're like making sound effects to like, it's really funny. He has that confrontation with Samuel L. Jackson again, threatening him with solitary. And then yes, we make it to Prague. The setting is beautiful. We see Prague in the daytime, and the music really sets the tone for that scene, and it really just, it instantly makes you want to visit the city. I think it's a really good thing when you shoot a location and it makes you want to actually visit. Anytime a director can shoot a city and make you want to visit, I think that's a good point there. I love how much Xander hates the Czech cop's suit. He insults his suit like multiple times in the movie, and this is just one of them. Yeah, I love the casting, all the characters. When Xander meets Yorgi for the first time in his club, all the casting is great. All the side characters are really funny and interesting. So a little bit more of that misogyny. Unfortunately, I don't know if this is Rob Cohen didn't write the film, so it might just be the writer, and it's not the same writer as Fast 1 either. It's just generally, writers in that time wrote scenes where male characters were misogynistic. At least in Fast 1, you have Letty having control of that situation. In this, it does seem a little bit more mean-spirited, but it kind of comes off as like Xander just like putting on a character. You don't really buy that he's actually misogynistic in that way. He's just putting on a face for these people. These people are supposed to be his buddies, and maybe they don't have the same character or morals as Xander does, even though he's just putting on the act. It kind of reminded me of in Greece when Sandy sees Danny Zuko after summer for the first time, where he has to put on this face in front of his buddies to remain this like macho kind of like male character in their eyes, and then you see how that devastates Sandy. I think it's funny, the guy who got racked in the face at the diner has nose bandages. I think it's awesome that Xander has a 2002 FaceTime, government FaceTime. That's a really cool thing. That was probably really techie and cool at the time, but now just your 5-year-old has FaceTime. So Vin's acting, he is playing a different character in this. He's definitely more cocky, but eventually he becomes more serious about his spy duties as he gets deeper and deeper into the investigation. But his acting is good, and he is playing a different character. You do see the difference between Dom and Xander. The comic relief isn't great. So the guy playing the Q, another James Bond reference. The guy playing Q isn't all that funny. He does have some good lines and good deliveries of lines. but he's not all that funny. And yes, he does have a pretty punchable face, so I think maybe that's what they were going for. So the guy with the punchable face does have some pretty sweet gadgets. The gun is awesome. There's been some cool guns in the movie. The gun that we see the sniper character has in the opening concert scene, his pistol is pretty cool. This revolver, this tac revolver, is really fucking cool. And I think it's great because the revolver, the nature of it being a revolver, you can have different ammunition in each cylinder. If it was just an automatic pistol with a magazine, you couldn't spin and choose each round or each ammunition to choose for whichever situation that you need. So I thought that was a really good touch. So I think it does deliver on, this film in general does deliver on the spy aspect. I think there is some good spy stuff, and I think definitely informed by those James Bond movies. Definitely informed by those. Yeah, this whole movie is just a little boy's dream. It was my dream as a little boy watching this. As a young boy, you don't really think about how a movie treats women sometimes, because, you know, we do see the binoculars as a gadget, and what does he do? What's the first thing he does is look through women's clothes, and then all the women are, and then the girl like looks at him and like smiles at him like, oh, that's so endearing, that's so like cute of him. No, that's actually super creepy. And so the Queens of the Stone Age, that badass song with the awesome cars, I still listen to that song to this day whenever I want to get hyped up for something. Really great song. Probably my favorite Queens of the Stone Age song. I don't know a whole lot of them, but it's definitely my favorite. The GTO is awesome. So the GTO is a 1967 Pontiac GTO. And so, for those who don't know, GTO is an abbreviation for a Italian phrase, Gran Turismo Omologato, which means Grand Touring Homologated in English. If you don't know what homologation is basically, if you want to race a car in a series as a manufacturer, you have to produce a certain amount of road-going versions of that car. That way, it keeps an even playing field, and it doesn't allow manufacturers to do one-off or two-off purpose-made prototypes. It kind of limits a manufacturer in that way and kind of keeps the playing field a little more even. And so the term GTO originates from the Ferrari 250 GTO, which was a road-going homologation car for Ferrari's racing team. I love seeing the awesome reverse J-turn in the old-ass muscle car. I've never really driven a muscle car that big and that old before, but I can imagine it's very difficult to do maneuvers in a car like that. After that, he's welcomed into Anarchy 99 at the club. The club is awesome. The techno is awesome. The Tesla coils with all the lightning and stuff is really cool. And a really good touch in this scene is that they're yelling. So when Yorgi is giving his explanation to Xander about Anarchy 99, which I have that whole exchange here that we'll get into and maybe talk about anarchy. This movie gives us a pretty good opportunity to talk about anarchism. You know, I'll be remaining as neutral as I can, but we might engage with the idea of anarchism, some advocates for it, maybe some people that would agree with Yorgi, and then we'll also be giving some refutations and some objections. We'll see, you know, both sides of the argument there. So he welcomes him into Anarchy 99. This is his explanation of why he started this terrorist group in the first place. So here's his explanation. It's what we've been living since 1999 when we left the army of Mother Russia. Many of our comrades died in combat. We said to hell with this shit. They died for what? Politics. Whose politics? Not ours. So we decide from then on to do what we want when we want. It is in their honor we call ourselves Anarchy 99. And then we get our mention of Anarchy Burger by the Vandals. And I have some notes on that song. So Anarchy Burger, the full song includes a parenthetical in the title. The full title of the song is Anarchy Burger, and then in parentheses, Hold the Government. So Xander just says Anarchy Burger, but that's the, you know, the title that everyone remembers, but there is more to the title. It is from the Vandals' debut EP, Peace Through Vandalism, from 1982. And it is one of the first releases on Epitaph Records, only being founded in 1981, so only a year prior. They quote the song. The quote that they use in the movie is America stands for freedom, but if you think you're free, try walking into a deli and urinating on the cheese. So, some good lyrics there to reference that. And I listened to the song. I'm not really into old punk music like that. I'm more into like post-hardcore stuff, but that's just me. As we talk about anarchy here, I'll be drawing heavily from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. It lists a few different varieties of anarchism: political anarchism, religious anarchism, theoretical anarchism, applied anarchism, and black, indigenous, and decolonizing anarchism. Since Yorgi specifically is quoting politics as his reason, he says politics twice in his explanation. So that's why we'll be focusing more on the political anarchism. Let's talk about the term. The term anarchism is derived from the negation of the Greek arche, which means first principle, foundation, or ruling power. Anarchy is thus rule by no one or non-rule. Anarchism is a political theory that is skeptical of the jurisdiction of authority and power. Anarchism is usually grounded in moral claims about the importance of individual liberty, often conceived as freedom from domination. Anarchists also offer a positive theory of human flourishing based upon an ideal of equality, community, and non-coercive consensus building. Anarchism has inspired practical efforts at establishing utopian communities, radical and revolutionary political agendas, and various forms of direct action. Political anarchists focus their critique on state power, viewing centralized, monopolistic, coercive power as illegitimate. Anarchists thus criticize the state, in quotations. Mikhail Bakunin, a Russian revolutionary, provides a historical example saying, if there is a state, there must be domination of one class by another, and, as a result, slavery. The state without slavery is unthinkable, and this is why we are the enemies of the state. Again, that was from Bakunin. A more recent example from Gerald Casey, an Irish academic, saying, states are criminal organizations. All states, not just the obviously totalitarian or repressive ones. The challenge for people trying to understand anarchism is to realize how diverse its movements can be. The historical and ideological context of a given anarchist's critique makes a difference in the content of the political anarchist critique. Bakunin was responding primarily to a Marxist and Hegelian view of the state, offering his critique from within the global socialist movement. Casey is writing in the 21st century in the era of liberalism and globalization, offering his critique from within the movement of contemporary liberalism. So some anarchists, like Yorgi, engage in a more broad generalization, aiming for a total critique of political power. So there isn't a whole lot of discrimination in Yorgi's plan. He literally says he wants the world to implode on itself. More about maybe some people that would agree with Yorgi's political violence. Emma Goldman, an anarchist revolutionary, political activist, and writer, says, I believe that anarchism is the only philosophy of peace, the only theory of the social relationship that values human life above everything else. I know that some anarchists have committed acts of violence, but it is the terrible economic inequality and great political injustice that prompt such acts, not anarchism. Every institution today rests on violence. Our very atmosphere is saturated in it. Here's another. Errico Malatesta, an anarchist propagandist, theorist, and revolutionary socialist, says, I think that a regime which is born of violence and which continues to exist by violence cannot be overthrown except by a corresponding and proportionate violence. Getting an idea of what anarchism is, some people who might actually agree with Yorgi, kind of the anarchism that he's speaking about in the film. So here are some of the objections and the replies to these types of ideas. So some objections to anarchism is that it is nihilistic and destructive. Okay, Yorgi does seem pretty nihilistic with just wanting the world to implode. I don't know. I don't see how a better world can come out of that. Anarchy will always evolve back into the state. Anarchism is utopian. Anarchism is incoherent. So I think that's a pretty good refutation of the Vandals, unfortunately. It does seem pretty incoherent to walk into someone's business and urinate all over their business. I don't think that is a very coherent refutation of maybe some political injustices that they might be seeing. And also, watching the world implode, that does seem pretty incoherent. And then philosophical anarchism is toothless. The criticism that all these people can write all these ideas down and say what they want, but ultimately it's more, they're just ideas, right? There's no actionable stuff behind these ideas. After Xander and Yorgi bond over anarchy burgers, they eventually leave the club and they go to an amazing looking castle. That castle that we see is a real chateau in Prague. It is, man, I'm going to butcher this, but I'll try. It's the Vronov nad Jin State Chateau. It is not actually in the mountains north of Prague where we see it. It is added in post. It is actually sitting in a national park in Prague. Beautiful chateau. Any terrorist organization would love to have that as their base, of course. So we see the anarchists, and Yorgi mentions that the owners just disappeared one day. Yeah, they probably just killed them and stole their house. And then we see the anti-materialistic nature of anarchism. They're bowling in the atrium, and their pins are like, we can imagine, very expensive pieces of art and pottery. Again, I'll go ahead and state that this movie doesn't treat women very well. We enter the castle, there's a bunch of women in bikinis in a hot tub in the court as everyone dries up, and then the men are just picking the women up out of the bath, out of the tub, like, and just like firemen carrying them, I imagine, back to their rooms, I guess. So like caveman activity, essentially. It does get more disgusting when you realize that these are terrorists and this is a terrorist organization. So there's a high chance that these women have been trafficked to this location. So it is very disgusting, and it's unfortunate watching this as an adult and seeing how poorly it treats women. You know, Yelena does get characterized by the end of the movie, and she's a strong female character in the movie, but every other woman in the movie is treated very poorly. I think it's a funny touch that Yelena's wearing a Harley Davidson jacket in Prague, so I think that's really interesting. She wants to, be taken to America as a refugee, essentially, but I think it's cool. It's a cool touch that she's wearing American garb, American company, because she wants to be in America. She's tired of being part of this investigation, which eventually falls apart, and she just is left behind. Great photography of Eastern Europe, seeing the mountains. I can imagine the mountains are real photography, just the chateau is put there in post, but everything around it I think is real. Talking about Yorgi and his explanation of starting this terrorist organization, he says he wants to be able to do whatever he wants, but it already seems like he gets to do that anyway. He's already living in a castle. He owns clubs, so he's rich as fuck. He already has all these material comforts in his life, and it doesn't seem like he's under any jurisdiction anyway. It's more of a revenge or vengeance for what he sees as some kind of political slight. I don't see how it benefits him to watch the world implode when the only reason he has all this wealth is that people are free to visit his clubs and pay for drinks and fund his lifestyle. So just pretty incoherent. Again, I think that's a pretty good refutation. Just more great photography of Prague. That restaurant is a real restaurant. It's a French restaurant. Xander is escaping the restaurant. He steals a silver platter, and then he uses the silver platter as a skateboard and just grinds it down the rail. And I think that's another good example of like the anti-materialistic nature of anarchism. You're taking the silver platter and then you're using it as a skateboard to just grind, destroying the platter. More great footage of the theater that Xander goes to. It's really beautiful. His confrontation with Samuel L. Jackson's character. I think that confrontation is really funny, the way it's edited. So we see Xander get angry. He kicks the seat. We cut to a wide shot, and then we cut to, I guess Gibbons is his name. We cut to Gibbons' face, and he's just like looking up at him like stone face. I think the way that scene is edited is really funny, and it's a good punchline. We can add rock climbing to Xander's skills. We see him scaling the mountain that the chateau is resting on. More fucking trank darts. Rob Cohen loves goddamn tranq darts. They built this entire science lab underneath this chateau. I think that's pretty crazy that they were able to design and build this entire like lab underneath the chateau. The rocket was already looking pretty phallic, but then it literally gets an erection. I thought that was funny. I don't know if that was an intentional or not, but yeah, the rocket is pretty dick-like. Damn, actually pretty cruel. Yeah, so when they just tie up all their loose ends and they commit genocide against all the white lab coat wearing scientists. That's actually pretty cruel, and then they're just making fun of them through the glass, mocking them, like pretending to choke and laughing at them, calling them little rats or mice or whatever. The hiding in the ceiling is really cliche. I feel like I've seen that in a bunch of movies and video games. I think Sherlock Holmes, A Game of Shadows, there's someone hiding in the ceiling. Some of the action choreography just isn't that great. The scene where they're sieging the castle, I think, is pretty good, but some of the choreography really isn't amazing. I think it's funny when we see the Ivans again. I think the Ivans are really funny. What are you doing with the Ivans? I think that's really funny. The kiss on the roof is so fucking cliche. Any superhero or action hero, he's always kissing someone on the roof. And I feel like, I don't know, maybe just my opinion, but Yelena and Xander really don't have a lot of like chemistry, honestly. I don't feel like their relationship is developed that much. Snowmobiles seem like a lot of fun. I've never actually ridden a snowmobile. I've ridden ATVs before, but I've never ridden a snowmobile. I haven't lived in places where snow gathers to the amount of needing a snowmobile. When I have visited like Montana in the winter and stuff, none of our family friends had a snowmobile. We were mainly just there to ski and stuff. I love sniper characters in movies, so another great sniper character is in Saving Private Ryan. Love his character. I don't know what it is about sniper characters. It's cool to think of their skills are honed and they're like a certain type of person that has to be, this accurate and this precise, with their weapon. So I think it's very cool to see sniper characters in movies. I like his character. I think this sniper character does have a lot of depth to him. We learn about his love for Yelena. We learn about how he loves smoking a lot and how he won't take a shot if he doesn't if he's endangering Yelena. So I think he is characterized pretty good in the movie. That on top of being just a cool sniper character. We eventually make it down to the wet launch of Ahab, where the boat is that Yorgi eventually hops on. I think the rocket launcher prop is really like cheesy and funny. Like that prop looks like it was put together in 2 minutes. Like it just looked like a camcorder with like a PVC pipe taped to it, and then they just like rattle canned it green. I thought that was really funny. It sucked that one of the Ivans had to die. We've seen the Ivans throughout the movie, even though they don't have a whole lot of character. I think the Ivans are better comic relief than the Gadget Dude. Kind of an interesting point. I don't know if I'm stretching here, but Xander earlier in the movie, he does his little speech in the car talking about violence in video games, and then we see Xander more proficient in killing because he played the shooter video games. When he first gets his tack revolver, he like spins it, the stereotypical spin the cylinder and flick it in and then point it at, and then the guy's like, no, you knocked over some 7-Elevens. He's like, no, I play video games. That's how I know how to use this revolver. And then Yorgi's escaping on the boat. He's trying to shoot him. Yorgi's like, learn how to shoot, you piece of shit. And then Xander, he goes prone to get a better shot. And you can think maybe, yeah, he learned that in video games, if you go prone, you have less recoil. He's talking about violence in video games, not causing people to, be violent or whatever. And then I don't know if I'm stretching, but it feels like it's kind of contradicting itself throughout the movie because Xander is a more efficient killer because he learned this shit from video games. I think in general, especially me living in America, just being familiar with guns and how to use them and use them safely if you come across one, because there are so many guns in this country. So generally, I think it is good to know how to use one and know things about it to handle it safely. But the way it's shot, we see Xander being able to kill more efficiently because of his video game use. The GTO is awesome. Looks great driving. And then so from the point of the GTO chasing down Ahab, I just kind of stopped having really anything to say about the movie other than shit is cool. The jets are cool, the stunts are cool, the imagery with the American flag, parachute over Prague is cool. I'm just going to be listing off some shit that's cool because there really isn't a whole lot else going on in this movie apart from me choosing to engage with Yorgi's anarchism, because I do want these podcasts to have some philosophy in them. Shout out, show me the meaning. I do want to be discussing a bit of the philosophy because I do enjoy that sort of thing. But yeah, it just kind of just evolves into just saying like shit is cool, like the explosion underwater is cool. And then Yelena, like when Xander dies, she's like, oh man, oh, it doesn't even matter if I get to go to America anymore. Yeah, it does, Yelena. I know you somehow fell in love with him with zero chemistry, but you still want to go to America, don't you? Like, because Xander's not alive, suddenly you don't want to go to America? That's dubious at best. And then I like Gibbons' last line. He's like, "You just passed the test." The Gibbons test. I thought that was a good line. The film ends with a Bush song. I like Bush. They're a good, they're a good band. I like some of their songs. It's a great radio band. More CGI stuff, some cheesy CGI. There's a fucking dragon that flies around in the credits. And then my last note here, maybe you can see it, is so fucking extreme. So that pretty much sums up this movie. It's so of period, and it's really interesting to see the contrast between Fast 1 and this movie, which is only the next year, and just how I was speaking how Fast 1 is so deeply rooted in the 90s. This movie is, it seems like we have made that transition. We're now in the 2000s. We're having post-hardcore music. The techno music is still there, but we hear some metal, some post-hardcore. We've made that transition, right? We're no longer in the 90s. We are now in the aughts, right? I'm going to go ahead and wrap up saying that, I really do enjoy watching this movie. Whenever I do go to put this in, getting ready for that Rammstein song, remembering all of the great stunts that are in the movie, remembering all the great photography, the setting. Some of the music is really cool. It really does deliver on all the spy stuff. I do have criticisms with the film. It's not a perfect movie, not by any means, but I still enjoy watching it. And I do like to put it in and have a good time with it. Because it does remind me of being a kid. So I would have been like 7. Yeah, I would have been 7 years old when this movie came out, so maybe I saw it a year or two later. So I was definitely the target demographic for this movie. It had all the cool stuff, had all the cool cars in it, the extreme sports stuff, and I grew up skiing, so seeing that snowboarding scene was really cool. And the avalanche effect did look pretty good for 2002 CGI. Wrapping up, go watch it again. I know there's problematic stuff. Shout out Austin. Some problematic stuff in it with how it treats women, but overall it does achieve what it sets out to be: a fun action spy movie with that early aughts kind of cheesiness and flair to it. That has been the second episode of the Movie Meatball podcast. I am the Movie Meatball, and we'll catch you in the next one.